So this is a problem. Look at the chief of the Air National Guard. Look at him sitting in the back of this Eagle. So the National Guard boss has warned of potential critical fighter shortage, and we're talking fighters, not pilots, fighters, actual cockpits. And so we've got a 60 fighter squadron requirement across the Air Force. Army General Daniel R. Hawkinson, the chief of the National Guard Bureau, said on April 30th. But we have 25 of those in the National Guard, and our ability to retain that capability when we're already short fighter pilots. So it does a little bit of a fighter pilot shortage. Maintainers will be critically important. Here's the problem. The A-10's going away. The F-15's going away. Some of the F-16s are going away, but not really. They've introduced this plan to have a minimum of 25 fighter squadrons in the Air National Guard, develop a plan to modernize, recapitalize the fleet. But it's like anything else. We don't have enough money, and we don't have enough airplanes. And so what he's pushing for is for the EX and F-35s to help the Guard fleet keep its pace with its active counterparts. The unfunded priorities include 6 EXs, 6 F-35s, and that is it for the article. Gonky, we've talked about this a lot, about how important the Air Reserve component is and what the missions are. People don't understand that you need a good Air Reserve component. You know, the Guard picks up the alert mission, so they're responsible for defending the homeland. You know, when things kick off, now within reason. I mean, there was an intercept for some bombers in Alaska. That was an active duty squadron, and F-22s do their own thing. But for the most part, you know, your alert missions are filled by the Air National Guard. The Air National Guard represents the majority of experience when you go deploy. You know, when deployments happen, they end up, you know, going out there and they're on continuous rotations and stuff. And it's, when you look at how much it costs from a personnel perspective, it's more financially feasible because you're not paying a full squadron of active duty people, right? With all the pay and benefits. If you took how much money that costs, put it on a spreadsheet, it's cheaper to put a traditional guardsman or traditional reservist in that seat than it is to put a full-time active duty person. Now, granted, the squadrons do have full-timers to keep the lights on and keep the mission going, but for the most part, the part-timers make up the bread and butter of what they do. So the problem here is we have, you know, it's kind of like that old house that you didn't work on for forever, and you just kind of let projects go by the wayside, and then 10 years later you're like, man, what has happened? Like, why are the walls that need to be repainted? And like everything kind of just piled up at once. You know, you need a new air conditioner, the walls are bad, like everything is bad all at once. And that's what's happened here, because traditionally we had a very quick equipment cycle where the active duty would get a new jet. You know, what's left would go to the reserves and the Guard, the F4s, the F100s, and we were using those over a long period of time. The problem is we burned out our hours in Iraq and Afghanistan, burning holes, doing 7-hour missions, 24-hour ops, just destroys the life cycle on airplanes. And then we had issues with procurement, with new, and this is not just Air Guard, Army Guard's the same way, Casmo, I'm pretty sure, where you had procurement issues so that there was no flow, right? There's no hand-me-downs if you don't have new stuff. So, and you don't want hand-me-downs. You still want highly capable aircraft in those squadrons. So what happens? Well, we get into this situation where we don't have the money and we're removing squadrons, and now all we have is an EX, which the buy keeps getting reduced, and the F-35, which the buy keeps getting reduced. And now you're going to have a situation where you're either going to shut down squadrons or you're going to have squadrons with 10 jets or 8 jets or whatever. And it's not sustainable. You cannot keep fighter pilots current if you don't have enough airplanes. And add to that, Guard especially, politics. So these senators are like, we can't lose the military presence in my area. Well, okay, well, we'll give you, 4 jets. Well, 4 jets is not enough just to keep the lights on. So I don't know what the answer is, other than we have to figure out our budgeting priorities, and we have to fix the procurement system because we need new jets, and we need to be able to continue the Guard Reserve mission because it's so important.
Yeah, dude, this is a problem that leadership's dealing with today from piss poor leadership 20 years ago, in my opinion. I mean, because it takes time, right? I mean, you just talked about it as far as like aircraft procurement. I think part of the reason too is F-35. I know we like to bag on Fat Amy, but you know that the timeline on that jet was not accurate, and I think it's pretty clear that I mean the EX is a good example of like, okay, the Air Force was looking for something different. You know, the fact that they didn't build nearly as many Raptors as they thought they would. I mean, if they would have built the original number of Raptors, they want to build 700 or whatever, they maybe they had airplanes to give to the Guard, the older ones, right? So, I mean, these are all decisions that were made years ago that we're dealing with now, and I think it was worsened by, like you said, man, the 20 years of moving one sand pile to the next sand pile, boring holes in the sky, you know. So there's a lot of things that are I think causing the lack of physical airplanes in the Guard, and probably goes beyond the Guard. I don't know how to fix it. I mean, I know how to fix it, but we're out of that too, and it's money. So it's tough.
And how do you recruit people? How do you, I mean, we just finished a pitch for a really good squadron, but
yeah,
how do you recruit people if you're going to tell them that, hey, you're not going to fly, you're not going to have any money, your travel vouchers aren't going to get paid, promotion's going to be this huge rigmarole that's not going to make any sense whatsoever, and we're not going to take care of you? Like, how do you promote, how do you recruit people into that?
Well, exactly. I mean, one of the main reasons I got out every time I've gotten out is they wouldn't let me do my job. You know, I got out of active duty because I was going to have to do the dog and pony show to go down this path, this like command path. I don't want to do that. And that involved probably not flying. Well, I just want to fly. I just want to do my job, fly airplanes. And if there's no money or airplanes to do your job, a squadron can hire you, send you to initial training. And then you get to where you're going. They're like, oh, sorry, man. We got one airplane. You might fly once a month. And then, dude, you brought up a whole another side of it is now, how do you rack and stack your people? Well, now the politics and the reindeer games matter, right? Number one Seaburn performer, it's like, just stuff that doesn't matter all of a sudden matters. And then, you're sitting there as a young person, like, what am I doing here? And then you get out, and then we have a manning problem, right? So it's money, man, at the end of the day.
Casmo, what do you have?
Yeah, it's just cascading issues, right? I mean, it starts small and then it builds up, and like you said, over time, and then now you're trying to counteract what the last guy did before him. I don't know that there's a solution. The problem is when leadership. The problem I have is when leadership ignores the problem and attributes it to something completely unrelated, like a lack of patriotism, type of shit. Like, it's like, well, if you love your country, if you love the army, you just stay through all the bullshit. And it's like, well, most people have a tolerance level that they've just reached it, and it's time to bounce. And I think that's what's happening.
Yeah. Casbo, I mean, the Army's gone through the same thing, right? With the upgrades and the recon, that helicopter that they were going to buy, that then they didn't buy, that then they're upgrading. Like they've gone through this thrash too, right?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. It's always throw money at the thing, and then the thing doesn't work out, and standard.
I think when we got into a world where money changed hands too many times, we lost the initiative. We lost our ability to defend ourselves when it became whose money is going where to whose pocket. For
you mean war became profitable?
Yeah, when it became a pork barrel spending, when it's like every bill had to have, well, Senator so-and-so's, it's his district. We got to build the left tire on the Apache, and now we've got a situation where we cannot get anything done because there's too many different hands in the pot, and all it's about is about moving money around, and it's not about what's best for our country.
Yeah. Well, we're coming from a time where money was no object, right? So that's like the past 20 years, nobody cared. Like I remember how many times I deployed, and it'd be like, hey, tomorrow we're going through the rapid fielding initiative. And I'd walk out of there with like 3 duffel bags worth of stuff that, 5 years later, I turned back in. It was still in the bag because I never used it. But how much money was spent on that? How many knives do I have? And how much, just crap do I have? And now you're getting to a part where, fiscally, we still have some constraints. and those are the issues. But I would also counter and say, like, we still go off of this idea that we're supposed to be able to fight two major conflicts at the same time. Is that still valid? And so when we look at how much money we have, because like the defense budget for this year alone was like $800 billion, $825 billion. Like, that's not enough. Like where are we prioritizing things?
Where's it going?
Where's it going?
Where's it going? Because we don't have any money. You know, when you go to the squadron level, they're like, we don't have any money. Like, we can't send you this. I mean, it is hard for people to take it seriously when they're getting hemmed up over $40 on a travel voucher, or, you know, some little, like, it's like we can't see the forest for the trees at this point.
I always tell the story about when I was a major, and I was given my primary duty for 2 weeks was to do an investigation to find out what happened to a missing iPad and a plasma TV. 2 weeks. How much money did the Army spend on me to exist to find $400 worth of stuff? And then 2 years later, we just walked out of Afghanistan and left how much, billions. I was like, well, where's the hand receipt on that stuff? So yeah, you're 100% right. We can't see the forest for the trees when it comes to money.
Yeah.
But like this younger generation, like, I mean, they see that and they see it's a dog and pony show. And they're like, do they want to be a part of that? Well, that's part of your recruiting problem, right?
Yeah. Yeah, they're smarter. I mean, they've got more information than we did.
Exactly. They have more information. It's not that they're smarter. They can see it. We couldn't see it back in our day joining and stuff. And
well, we were blinded by world events. We didn't need to see it. I mean, we didn't need to see it because we watched, airliners hit Twin Towers, and we were like, well, it doesn't matter. We're at war. Right. Yeah, we're at war. Yeah. So it's a little bit different.
I mean, I was already in, but to be fair, I was already thinking about getting out when all that happened. So yeah, exactly. You had a catalyst to keep you going. And again, when we got in during that time, even if you got over that sort of level of patriotism, you were still doing stuff, right? And that's the thing. I had a captain that worked for me, and one day he called me. He's like, "Hey, sir, I'm thinking about getting out." And I said, "Just do it. Like, if you're thinking about it, just get out." And he says, "Well, what would you do if you were me?" And I said, "Dude, when I was you, I was deploying, I was shooting at people, I was leading soldiers in combat. Like, I was doing cool guy stuff." I was like, "Are you doing that now?" No.
Right.
It's hard for me to say what I would do if I'm you, because it sounds boring.
Yeah. He wasn't doing his job, right?
Dude, that's an actual really good point. When I think the problem we run into for retention is when you feel like there's no mission and you feel like there's no purpose. When I was you bring up when you were a young guy, and I remember being in the F-16 basic course, talking to my unit, and they're like, "Hey, you're going to, as soon as you get here, you're going to war. You're going to Iraq in January." And it was, it's summertime in Luke, and I'm doing close air support missions. And in my mind, I'm thinking, this is what it's going to look like. I need to make sure, because I'm going to war. Disturbed's playing with the, indestructible and all that stuff. And I'm like, I'm going to war. This is my mind at work here. And even though, later you realize what I was bored holes, like Gonky said, moving one pile of dirt to another, you knew I was training for something to go do something. Now these squadrons are looking at it and they're going, well, what am I training for? Because we don't have the money. We don't have the equipment. We're flying, 4-turn nothing. And I don't have, that is morale crushing when you tell a fighter pilot that, you're just training just to bore holes in the sky. What is the end result? What am I doing this for? Versus I could go be an airline pilot, which right now it's always cyclical. When the airlines are doing well, retention and recruiting retention has problems. And when the airlines are doing poor, everybody comes flooding back. But right now, airlines are at historic highs, and there's no light at the end of the tunnel. There's no, here's what I'm training for, here's my purpose, and you're giving me all the tools I need to do them.
Yeah, I slightly disagree with that, man. When in 09, 08, whenever I went to the RAG as an IP, every IP that could get out got out. And back then, everybody was furloughed. So, you got motivated people. If the mission is unclear, if there's no focus in where we're going, what we're doing, you're going to have problems with motivated people, because they're going to go somewhere where they can use their talents and skills and do stuff. Right. I mean, I mean,
Yep.
you know, all three of us don't want to just sit there and twiddle our thumbs and stare at the wall. I mean, and that's essentially what you do, because a lot of times you go in and it's like, well, I wonder what we're going to do because we have no money, probably some meetings. That's not cool.
Probably.
You know, I mean, the worst day on deployment when you're in a Navy squadron, you're on the ship. The worst day is no fly day because it's all meetings bookended front to back. It's like they knock out all the meetings and you sit there all day. And it's like at the end of the day, like that was a complete waste. And I cannot wait to get back to flight ops.